Others See Us by William Sleator, 6. I had part of the answer now. I had begun to pick up people's thoughts, including their security codes, soon after falling into the toxic swamp. Grandma had fallen into the swamp, too. She was always wandering all over the property. No one would think it was odd to see her near either of our cottages. I now remembered that I had been thinking about my journal as well as its hiding place while talking with Grandma yesterday. And today, Grandma had made that remark to Eric about words. "Nothing carries more expression than the right word. Jared can tell you that," she had said to him. How else could she have known that I did think about words if she hadn't peeked into my mind, found out I wanted to be a writer, and also read my journal? Had Grandma also stolen money from the ATM and broke into the Winston's house? That was hard to believe. Was there a third mind reader around who was the criminal? I still had a lot of questions. My immediate impulse was to get to Grandma fast. I cautioned myself to wait a minute, not rush off blindly, construct some kind of strategy first. With Grandma, I would have to be very, very careful. If she knew I could read minds, I might never learn anything from her. Annalise was being outwardly nice to me now, though her worries about her journal continued to dirty the atmosphere like flies around rotting meat. "What's the matter, Jared? Say something." I didn't bother to respond, though a corner of my mind registered with pleasure how nonplussed she was, that any boy could dismiss her with such casual aloofness. I just went on concentrating hard, making an effort to ignore the sharp, painful pinching of her anxiety. I was getting better at shielding my brain from other people's thoughts. But could I also hide my own thoughts from another mind reader? I now knew it must be possible, since Grandma had obviously concealed her real thoughts from me today. But I had no practice at that. How had Grandma done it? I remembered with a sinking feeling the impossible paradox of the alchemist's formula for turning lead into gold. All you had to do was stir the molten lead while not thinking the word rhinoceros. What I would have to do to hide my thoughts from Grandma would be a lot harder than that. Being alone with Grandma would guarantee failure, but filling her mind with distractions from other people might give me somewhere to hide. What I needed was a diversion, so electrifying and magnetic that it would drag the entire focus of Grandma's attention away from me. Knowing Grandma, what would be most irresistible to her would be some deliciously sordid secret. I was buzzed again by Annalise's swarming insect bites of distress about her journal. I wasn't as uncontrollably worried about my journal as Annalise was about hers. My emotions had subsided since I'd had more time to adjust to its disappearance, and most of the stuff in my journal was bland and boring compared with the brutal nastiness that dominated Annalise's. Grandma would certainly consider Annalise's journal a far more toothsome morsel than mine. She had just stolen it this morning and probably hadn't had time to read all of it yet. And Annalise's powerful emotions about her journal were impossible to ignore. I stood up and looked at my watch. "Meet me at Grandma's in 5 minutes," I told her with all the authority I could muster. "What good will that do? If anybody's read them, don't you think we'll be able to tell? Whoever has them will act different, guilty, something that might give it away." It wasn't a lie. I just wasn't telling her everything. "But if it is a thief in the neighborhood, he won't be at Grandma's." But if it is that thief in the neighborhood, he won't be at Grandma's. I wanted her to be as frightened as possible to attract Grandma's curiosity. I never said it couldn't be somebody in the family who took the journals. Maybe it is. Wouldn't we have noticed somebody else sneaking around here? Anyway, don't you want to eliminate the family as soon as we can? Nothing would be worse than one of them finding the notebooks. I paused and then spoke with grim emphasis. Until we're sure, we have to consider all our relatives as enemies. We can't stop worrying about any of them for an instant. Don't forget that. 5 minutes. Be there. The first thing I did at the beach was to check on Amy. She was being safely kept away from the water by Eric. Lindy had instructed him not to let her out of his sight for an instant. Not only was Lindy more responsible about Amy than Aunt Grace was, she had been the only one to see through Annalise. Until today, I had been too stupid to notice how unusual Lindy was. Now, eager to find out what other surprises might be in her mind, I was drawn to her. She was sitting under an umbrella reading War and Peace, so it was easy to start a conversation with her about Anna Karenina. Annalise's parents were still out sailing, but everyone else was nearby on the beach, except Grandma. I quickly learned from Lindy's mind that Grandma had just returned from some errand. She hadn't said where she had been. Now she was in her study, having mentioned vaguely that she had some kind of business to attend to. While talking to Lindy, I hopped from one mind to another, looking for more information about Grandma. I knew by now that trying to read several minds at once was confusing, like trying to listen to two different radio stations. You learned a lot more by focusing on only one mind at a time. No one knew what Grandma's errand had been, and many people were curious about what she was doing, since Grandma's usual pattern was to inflict upon her skin the sunlight of midday when the rays were most dangerous. Getting the deepest possible tan as quickly as possible was not her only motivation. Everyone knew Grandma enjoyed flaunting her utter disregard of the family's disapproval, since the more they begged her to be careful about the sun, the darker she got. And now, Grandma probably also got a tremendous charge out of looking into the minds of her children and their spouses and learning which of them were genuinely concerned about her health and which were hoping she would die of skin cancer. The sooner the better. Grandma had always claimed that she had serious money problems, constantly threatening that she was going to have to sell off portions of the estate, if not the whole thing. But despite what Grandma said, it was no secret that all her offspring and their spouses believed her death would result in inheritances for them. That was probably the main reason Grandma had always relished going on and on about how she really had no money at all. But this year, for the first time in all my memories of her, Grandma had not said one word about how poor she was. I forgot about it as soon as Annalise arrived. Her dark hair was brushed and gleaming again, as straight and perfect and boring as a wig on a department store dummy. She was calm and poised despite the specific thoughts about her journal that were stinging me like hungry flies, accompanied by her feverish plotting of the potential defense strategies. She squatted down beside me and Lindy as casually as if nothing were the matter at all. It was interesting to see them together, reading Lindy's distaste for Annalise's falseness, her envy at Annalise's beauty. Sure, Lindy needed to lose a little weight, but her curly, tousled hair was actually much prettier than Annalise's. I was more curious than ever about the terrible worry that gnawed at Lindy, which was now just inches beyond my reach. But I had no time to think about that now. I had to get Annalise and Grandma and me together. I'm going to get something to drink. I tilted my head at Annalise and stood up. Me too, Annalise said. You want anything, Lindy? Lindy shook her head silently, not thanking Annalise, and turned back to her book. Annalise didn't know why I wanted to go inside, but she felt so self-conscious about confronting anybody who might have seen her journal that she was grateful for the chance to avoid the relatives for as long as possible. We went in through the side door, which leads into the kitchen. The ancient patched screen had been replaced by a sturdy new one. It was cool and dark inside, and there was a faint garbagey smell, with dirty dishes and newspapers all over the place. I knew where Grandma's study was, at the opposite end of the house from the kitchen, but I stalled in front of the shiny new refrigerator. I was very nervous about facing Grandma. It seemed of utmost importance to me that Grandma mustn't know yet that I could read minds too. If she knew, she'd keep everything important from me. I'd never find out about the journals or be able to use my abilities to get them back. Grandma had known that the thief in the neighborhood had fallen into the swamp and could read minds. That was why she had set up the barrier yesterday in front of all the others. That gave me the impression there was nothing in her mind but what she was verbalizing. But Grandma had no reason to be suspicious of my being a mind reader, since the crimes had taken place before my arrival. My hope was that, with only Annalise and me around, she would let down her guard, distracted by Annalise's stinging thoughts, and give me a chance to peek inside hers. But she would never do this if she had an inkling of what I could do and what I knew about her. So how was I going to not think about those things? One strategy might be simply to focus my attention on the objective world, the spider webs in the corners, the linoleum on the floor, the views through the dusty windows, giving Grandma nothing interesting but Annalise's mind to pick up. I was pretty sure she'd be hooked by Annalise's insidious intensity, her fears and her plotting as soon as she got a sniff of them. And I knew you picked up more if you concentrated only on one mind at a time, meaning Annalise's thoughts might keep Grandma away from mine. Let's go tease Grandma about her tan fading, I said. Huh? Annalise wasn't suspicious of Grandma. Lindy told me she was in her study. Maybe she's reading something, I said in a significant whisper, staring hard at Annalise. Annalise's eyes widened for the first time. She connected Grandma with the journals. Annalise knew very well how much Grandma adored gossip and relished speaking her mind. Her horror boomed and ignited with the fury of an incendiary bomb. I ducked away from the raging bonfire, actually breaking into a sweat from the intense heat. But what will we do if she has them? Annalise had no idea that to a mind reader, her uncontrollable speculation was exactly what Grandma might have read, was exactly like searchlight beacons splaying the contents of her journal across the night sky. If she's read them, that's all the more reason to stop her, now. Annalise couldn't argue with that. She reluctantly followed me out of the kitchen, past the stairway piled with objects that were never carried upstairs, down the dark, narrow hallway. I paused outside the closed study door. How much power did Grandma really have? What if I couldn't hide from her? What would she do to me if she found out what I knew about her? My worries were interrupted again by Annalise's hot, glaring, Klieg lights of distress. I held my breath and knocked on the door of Grandma's study. Who's there? Grandma called out, and I heard papers rustling, a drawer slamming shut. Jared and Annalise, I answered. We missed you outside. Are you okay? Well, aren't you sweet, worrying about your poor old Grandma? More hurried shuffling. Come in, come in. Her study was a small, dark room that reeked of cigarette smoke. As I stepped inside, I concentrated on the old library. Table piled sloppily with magazines and papers, the cobwebs on the green-shaded lamp, the yellowed photographs glued haphazardly to the dirty walls. I did what I could to keep away from Annalise's mind-scorching conflagration. Grandma actually flinched, not prepared for anything of such violence, her blotchy red mouth twitching in an odd sort of way, her eyes instantly riveted on Annalise. Aren't you afraid your tan will fade? I managed to utter, my voice flat and unconvincing as I struggled to concentrate on a decades-old photograph of Grandma and Grandpa. I was pretty sure that Annalise's adrenaline rush was beating through Grandma with the force of an amplifier at a rock concert. Unaware of the possibility of mind readers, Annalise was doing nothing to censor the contents of her mind. Grandma was good, all right. She quickly covered a reaction, putting down her knitting, forcing a smile, pushing her glasses up her nose, her ironic tone convincingly normal. You should talk. Still pale as a jellyfish, ignoring your grandmother's instructions, she chastised me. But Grandma's hand trembled as she lit a cigarette, oblivious that the one still burning in an ashtray on her permanently disorganized desk. Did I dare hope she was so bowled over by Annalise's emotions that she might have become forgetful and dropped her guard? It wouldn't be long. I had to act, and it had to be now. I was tense as a shoplifter entering a crowded department store. I was cowering with the vulnerability of a dream in which you were naked in a public place and know that the next instant you'll be caught. But I didn't hesitate. Hoping no alarms would go off, I stepped carefully into Grandma's mind. And that's the end of chapter 6.